Welcome back to Sunrise, looking at some efforts on the ground, rebuilding, trying to return things close to normalcy. So thank you, Jem. Yes, thank you to Jem and the efforts that they're doing. And speaking of efforts on the ground, I know there's some people, real quickly before we get into Money Masterclass, who are so concerned about family members, friends, because they haven't heard from them. Yes. And you know, we have our very own YouTube community right here for Sunrise.
Hi, Odette.
And one of our very own...
Hi, Sharon. Good morning, Paulette.
We was very worried about one of our very own. It was Odette.
Yeah.
Odette, who nobody had heard from her. We weren't seeing her in the Sunrise chat, and the Sunrise community was like, where's Odette? Where's Odette? What's happening? We've heard from Odette. Odette is safe. Yes. Odette is well. So for those of you who are in the chat now, just know she's well. She's okay. You know, internet problems, but she's fine. Yeah. So, and thank you to our Sunrise community for checking in.
We love you guys.
Man, oh no, you guys are amazing. So it's now time for Money Masterclass, brought to you by Guardian Life. We'll be looking at how the island plans to recover from the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. He'll explain how Jamaica's financial fortress actually works, the system of funds, insurance, and international tools that could help the country recover faster after the disaster. We'll talk where the money comes from and how instruments like the Catastrophe bond, the CAT bond, work.
Let me tell you.
Because while we can't stop the storms, we can cushion the blow. So over to you, Carlton.
One Dr. Nigel Clark.
Good morning, everybody. How are you both doing? Everybody's good?
Well,
looking nice and flow to keep the energy and the vibe.
We're trying to keep the energy up.
Trying our best,
you know?
To cheer you up. Yes, yes. So before I jump into it, I met a young lady yesterday, a young girl, about 6 or 7. It's like, hi, Uncle Carlton, I saw you on night TV. I watched you talking about the money. Yeah. And I said, I'm going to big you up this morning because when the children are watching and tuning in, the future is bright. So her name is Liana Linton.
Liana.
Big up to Liana. She attends Mona Preparatory.
And Liana have manners. You should call you Uncle Carlton and them something me talk about.
Definitely. So
big up to Liana, mommy, and daddy. You grow her good. I love it.
Liana. Wonderful. So I know we're all reeling from the impact of the hurricane. And it has already passed. It's behind us as in the events. But we have to rebuild. And we need to see what best can be done because as a country, we just have to rebuild. We can't lay down and play dead. And I know it's rough for many of us who are going through it. For many persons who are actually in the situation, it is dire. You know, I went on the ground in some other areas that was not badly impacted, like maybe down in the other regions. But I'm telling you, it's rough. You know, but what do we do as a country? So it is estimated there's no finalized figure as yet. But economists are estimating that the minimum to recover is about $2 billion at its minimum. And as a country, every country wants to be financially resilient. But what that really is your ability to bounce back financially after something like this. After a major catastrophe, you need to bounce back. But how do countries generally bounce back? Generally, they look to maybe loans, you know, pre-arranged loans in place, and they may have some reserve in savings, the majority, and some may pivot over to insurance or to the capital market, which brings us over to what we call the catastrophic bond, or in recent times, it's been a very popular term, Jamaica's CAT bond. So what is this really and truly? It's an insurance instrument where a country, like in our case, pays a premium, just like a regular insurance.
Yeah, like you insure yourself.
Yes, like you insure yourself. And in the event that there is any catastrophic event, then something is triggered. A payment is generally triggered. So Dr. Nigel Clark, who was our then Minister of Finance, would have implemented or taken on something of this nature in earlier, maybe 3 years ago, roughly. It was then renewed at about 150 million US dollars, roughly. And in the event of anything happening, then that will be triggered. What are the key components of a CAT bond? Let's jump into it. So you have the issuance, which is the person, the country, or the company which will then issue to raise the capital. So in this scenario, maybe the World Bank will issue because for you to cover for this amount of money, where is the money coming from, actually? So you have the investors. So those are the persons who will then provide the funding for this bond. So the World Bank, for example, will say, we're covering Jamaica for this amount of money under this natural disaster, but where the money going to come from? Investors like maybe TK, Miss Kitty, couple of rich people may come and say, all right, this is a bond, this is a bond.
I receive it, but
I will put up 50 million, 20 million, 2 million, $10 million, because investors would need to put up the funding just in the event, all right? You have what's called a trigger event. So just in case a particular country, this particular catastrophe comes into place, then we will pay over the principal. If for that year when you pay your premium, if nothing happens, the investors who put up their money will obviously get some nice return because you'd have paid the premium like your regular insurance, but nothing happened.
Right.
So for example, you pay your car insurance, there was no accident that year,
claim.
there is no claim. So the insurance company gets your money and you move on. Similarly in this regard. So Jamaica would have maybe paid out maybe last year, the year before, when we had it, but when burial came, nothing happened because it was not triggered.
Yeah, because it has to be at a certain level in order for it to be triggered.
But yeah, read the book. Yeah, read Dr. Myra Clark book. So let's jump into it. So the trigger event, if the event I mentioned occurs, then the bond is triggered into activation. In this scenario, Jamaica was the first to use a cat in a trigger approach. Let me break that down for you.
Yeah.
So if you're looking on your screens, Jamaica was broken down into different grades. So if on the screen you're seeing grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, whatever the case is. In each grade, if the pressure is below a certain threshold, then it is triggered. The lower the pressure, the more intense the hurricane will be. So for example, in trigger 5, in grade 5, sorry, grade 6, grade 7 that you're seeing on screen, you'll see maybe the Westmoreland in that grade, etc. If I think some of them are 900 is the pressure threshold. If it goes below 900, then it is triggered. In this scenario, for Melissa, it was below the 900. Hence, most persons are speculating that this is going to trigger a payout for Jamaica. And God bless Dr. Nigel Clark and the team of persons who would have thought that this is needed because we are in a zone or an area that we likely would get hurricanes. And in previous times, TK, we had to be wondering where the money are coming from. We're going to take a loan here and there, etc., etc. TK?
Carlton, is it a one-time thing? So, okay, now we've had this catastrophe, we're no longer eligible, or if something happens again next year or the year after, are we still eligible for funds?
Well, I'm not sure because remember, Jamaica is the first to actually have this grading approach. So I am going to assume that we're able to get another insurance again because it's a bond that you're raising. So other persons will be willing as well because the return is generally good.
Like insurance, though, maybe our premium is going to probably go up a little. But still, I think we should be able.
It is designed for countries like Jamaica, Mexico, countries that are generally likely to get natural disasters. We're in that belt, So that is how the trigger in the grid actually works, and we're hoping. But what are the benefits to having a cat bond? It is obvious. Number one is to provide quick funding for recovery. So generally, if you're regular insurance, they come in and they do an assessment. They investigate. They want to see how much money it will take for Jamaica to recover. How much will you need from this insurance amount, etc., etc. So for example, for your car insurance, you meet with an accident, you have to get a report done. Investigator have to come, verify. You get a report from your mechanic. They go and get their mechanic or person to come in to double check if what your mechanic says is actually right. That would normally happen in a regular insurance. For the catastrophe bond, once these triggers are met, the payment is generally much quicker, automatic. So that's a general benefit that persons can look to. Number two, it is lucrative for investors. So I'm not looking at the cat bond from the investor standpoint. We can always do that at some point. But for today, we're looking at it from the Jamaica, the countryside benefiting. But it is lucrative for the person who's putting up their money. So for example, Jamaica would have had it for 3 years, paying premiums, nothing happened. It was renewed again for a 4th year, maybe possibly nothing happened. Those investors are likely getting excellent principal and a nice return. They're saying about 20% on average is where investors in the cat bond normally reap. You're getting that nowhere else on any bond. So investors are looking more to that. It also gives them diversification. Forgive you, you're 10 million.
But I
20 million.
I'm going there.
But what you find, investors are looking for diversification in their portfolio to see what else. Because remember, we are exposed to maybe the stock market, for example, etc. So persons are trying other things in the investment space to see how can I diversify. If you understand weather patterns, etc., etc. But because of climate change, persons are now wondering, should I still continue in this space? But for now, it's a very lucrative space for investors. But it's something good. So we're looking from the Cap One standpoint that Jamaica may possibly see $150 million US. That's about 2 billion roughly. Using the exchange rate of 159, 160, you're talking about 2 billion Jamaican dollars to kickstart some of the recovery efforts. There are other insurance policies. I know there is a CVM that likely we may possibly see some additional funds there as well, but we can get into that in subsequent Money Masterclass to break them down so we understand what is happening and how the government would have been able to put these different layers in place, because I am so glad we're at this point now. Yeah. Because in previous years, as I've mentioned, we had to be scrambling, you know, and depending solely, or the majority of our dependence was on donations.
Yes.
But now, while the international community is supporting Jamaica, there are some things in place that we're able to mobilize the help in the meantime.
Carlton, one of the things I would like for you to you know, explore is, and I've thought about it, and I say, the persons who have been severely affected by this, I call it demonic hurricane and disaster, in terms of loans that they may have had or may have. One, can the debt be wiped out completely, like a debt forgiveness? Like, you know what, guys, you've been totally wiped out, decimated. We understand you don't have to pay back that car loan or that house loan or whatever it is. Can that be done? How would that affect our economy? Okay, what kind of impact would have on our economy? And is it possible for a moratorium to be given? I remember in COVID, there were many financial institutions who said, you know what, you don't have to pay us back until 6 months' time. We'll understand what's going on. But so can a moratorium be given, or a complete debt wipeout? Because this, what I'm seeing right now, Carlton, there is no... it's not tomorrow, next week, or next year.
No, that's
this is going to, you know,
but
be
the
able
good
to
thing
be
that you
sorted.
mentioned, Ms. Kitty, just as though Jamaica possibly would have had some insurance, I'm hoping that some of the persons maybe who had a car loan, there was insurance on their car. So insurance companies would now come and do a payout to wipe out some of those loans. If the house was possibly insured, and I'm hoping that the clauses would have covered maybe flooding, for example,
force majeure.
that the payments could come to maybe assist in wiping out some of these loans. And also, I know banks are looking at the option that you mentioned as moratorium. So we can break down moratorium for some of our viewers to understand what this is, how it is that this can benefit the persons who are now in a predicament, and how that moratorium period can help them to maybe bounce back.
But like how Ms. Kitty give you an assignment, we're looking forward. I love we're looking forward to that for the next, or one of the next Money Masterclass. I think it's an excellent question and something excellent to look at.
Please take note. Let us get that done.
Thank you so much for this information and bringing so much clarity.
You know, or not, you understand? And then, by the way, it's not just for the people who are affected, right? I like we are told.
Because you are elf.
You are elf. But a lot of us, you know, all right, remember, you know, there are so many people who, you don't even have it, you know, but out of the little that you have, you're still a buy one tissue, you're still a buy a water. So there are a lot of people. So even though we may not be physically impacted, we're emotionally impacted and financially, because you have family members who you have to be helping, friends and strangers who you have to be helping.
So maybe in Kingston, maybe with a 2-month moratorium
versus the other.
Get a 12-month
or like Black River, you know, and West Side, you just wipe out 100% of them debt, and like Kingston, Portmore, you just wipe out half our debt.
You just want the wipe out.
Yeah, but it's for a wipe out.
You just want wipe out.
Yeah.
Not in this segment right now.
We're wiping out for the segment right now.
Thank you so very much. It's Carlton GST on all platforms, and I'll break it down even more on my YouTube channel at some point.
Lovely. Carlton, thank you so much as always. And of course, we look forward to you fleshing out your assignment. Thank you so very much. Money Masterclass was brought to you by I've given Dennis for Guardian Life.
Guardian Life.
Right? Please do stay with us. News is up next.